Welcome. In this video, we're talking Phase 2 using the tool NMAP. So NMAP is a free and open source network scanner, and it is used to discover host services and other details on a network. Normally, it will be sending packets and will be analyzing responses. So again, here we're looking at basic NMAP. So first one we have is if we want to scan a single IP, we can do NMAP and just an address. If we want to scan a specific range, we can do that as well. If we want to scan a domain name or using slash notation, that's how we would do it. If we want to use different scanning techniques, we could be doing a TAC SS, and that will look for a TCP sync port scan. That's the default scan. We could be doing a TCP connect port scan, UDP scan, TCP ACK, maybe a Windows scan, and so forth. Again, we're going to do each one of these types of scans so that we can see possible output. Lastly, we're going to do some service and version detections. So we can do a TAC SV, and that will attempt to determine the version of services. If we want to look at OSs, we can do a TAC A. If we want to do a remote OS detection using the TCP stack for fingerprinting, it'll be a TAC O. So again, part of what we're going to be doing in this video is doing different forms of scans at a basic level and looking at the outputs. So let's go ahead and jump in our Kali. Go and get logged in. And as you can see, we have our Kali, Metasploitable 3, and our Windows 10. So first things first, let's go ahead and let's assume we don't know anything about the network other than that our Kali machine pulled an address. So I'm going to do an Ifconfig. So I know my network is going to be 192.168.50.0 with a /24, 8 bits, 8 bits, 8 bits. So that should give us a /24. So I'm going to go ahead and do an NMAP 192.168.50.0/24. I'm going to start the scan. I'm going to pause until the scan is finished. That went fairly quickly. So I started the scan, 2 popped up. We found that this host is up. It's receiving port 53. We seen another address, 134. It popped up with these services. This guy popped up with no services. So what is interesting is it found 3 hosts. It did not find our Windows 10 machine. 134 is our Metasploitable 3. 135 is our Kali machine. This guy up here, .2 is our default gateway. So that means our Windows 10 actually blocked this type of scan. And that happens sometimes, so not a big deal. We can scan a domain if we know the name, so we can do NMAP google.com. Again, the assumption is we have permission, so I'm actually going to change it. I'm going to do NMAP scanme.nmap.com. Scanme.nmap.com is a web domain that we do have permission to scan. .org. And it's going to take a little bit of time, so I'm going to pause while it scans. Alright, so scan, it said it took 30 seconds. It did take longer than 30 seconds. nmap.org resolve to that IP address. it showed port 22, 80, 9927, and 31337. Those are the ports that it found open. So again, in NMAP, we can slowly start trying to figure out what ports are open, so we can start figuring out how to target a specific web server. In the earlier scan, when we scanned Metasploitable 3, we seen FTP open, we seen SSH open, we seen port 80 TCP open, we seen port 445, that's Microsoft's SMB. We seen PPP, we seen MySQL and Intermapper. Those ports all open. So we're going to start looking at ways to exploit those services. One thing that would be very helpful is if we knew what service was actually running on those ports. So we can do a combination. We can do, instead of just doing NMAP with an IP and a slash notation, we can add in the S_V. And this will give us an attempt to determine the version of services running on those ports. We can combine switches so that we can get different results depending on whatever our needs are. So here we found port 21. It's using Pro FTPD version 135. SSH is using SSH version 6.6.1p using a Ubuntu 2.10. Port 80, it's using Apache version 2.47. 445, it's using Samba, again, earlier versions of Samba. So part of this is so that we can slowly start building our information about what services are running. Now we know what versions are running. So now let's go ahead and let's try to do operating system. Let's see if we can see the operating system. So we can do attack A, and this will enable OS detection, version detection, script scanning, and traceroute. Realistically, we are looking at OS detection and version detection to see if we can find what details those are. So our output took a little bit longer. Again, we did NMAP with attack A. First host, it found DNS open, but it didn't figure out what operating system. With our second host, our Metasploitable, it found that these ports are open. It gave us the actual state of the port, the service, and the version. Interesting that it gave us our SSH keys. For our port 80, it gave us our version, but it also started listing some possible directories that it found and a specific file that it found. With Samba, again, it gave us our work group. It gave us our version. With other things, again, it gave us potential options. Gave us versions. For our MySQL, it shows an open state, shows MySQL. It doesn't show that we're authorized, so we don't get those details. But again, this is enough to slowly start building a table to see what services they're running, what versions they're running, and ways to start exploiting them. All right, so lastly, I wanted to talk about our scanning techniques. So we can do our scanning techniques. Let's say that we want to do a default TCP sync scan. Lowercase s, capital S. Some of the scans actually do require additional privileges. So actually, again, when you're doing this, the assumption is you have permission. Here we're doing a TCP sync port scan, and this is again assuming we have permission. We can start seeing additional information. Here we got our MAC addresses. for our Kali machine. Actually, that's not our Kali machine. Our Kali machine is 135. It pulled the MAC address for our broadcast. It pulled a IP address for, or the MAC address for whatever 136 is. And it pulled a MAC address for our Metasploitable 3. I am kind of interested though, what is 136? So 136 is our Windows 10 machine. So it did not specifically find it in some of the other scans, but it did find it in our TCP sync port scan because it actually found that port open. So kind of interesting. Again, this is just a basic overview of NMAP, and we use some basic scanning techniques. If time allows, we will do a separate video on advanced NMAP scanning, but realistically, you can take to any search engine, type NMAP scans, and you can get a cheat sheet of all of the scanning techniques that are out there. If you have any questions about NMAP at a basic level, feel free to reach out. Thank you.